Today, on this episode of Under the Radar, I want to cover something that rarely gets discussed in an honest, open way in corporate media. Also, some new developments are just starting to unfold. Those familiar with Donald and the ways in which the Trump regime operate are already seeing warning signs in its war over trans rights, which has been a feature of Donald's regime since 2017. Basically, what we're looking at is an escalation, and they're already teeing up the next battle. Here's WJZ with more.
After a busy and sometimes contentious summer of emergency decisions, the Supreme Court returns with a heavy docket for the new term. Karen Kafer reports from Washington.
The Supreme Court did not get much of a summer break, weighing in over the last 3 months on a number of emergency cases around President Donald Trump's administration and its policies. Now the court's new term, which opened on Monday, also features a docket loaded with key cases that will tackle how much power the president has under the U.S. Constitution and some hot-button social issues. This week, the court will hear another case regarding transgender rights. The justices will hear a challenge to a Colorado law banning so-called conversion therapy, the discredited practice that purports to convert gay or transgender people to be straight, by a licensed counselor in the state who says such restrictions violate the First Amendment. Later in the term, the court will hear arguments in a case involving transgender students playing on school sports teams that align with their gender identity.
Yes, let us weep for this corrupt, illegitimate supermajority of the Supreme Court that didn't get 3 months off this summer. Let's not kid ourselves. They love this is like a vacation for them, getting to strip rights away from Americans. And transgender rights are something they've been gunning for a long time. But let's be very clear about what this is being couched as. It's an obscene violation of the First Amendment. A Christian counselor, whatever that is arguing that her First Amendment right to free speech is being violated because she cannot use therapy as a tool to torture her patients. Got that? Got that? So, what do we think this corrupt, illegitimate supermajority of this Supreme Court is going to do? Conversion therapy, clinical psychologist here, doesn't work. It is detrimental to the patient. And it is, in my view, malpractice. I don't understand what expertise the corrupt, illegitimate supermajority has that would allow it to render such judgments about any kind of therapy. I also, and forgive me if I'm showing my bias here, I don't understand how a Christian counselor, whatever that is, can pretend to do something as specific and technical as therapy on somebody who does not share her belief system. That seems wildly problematic to me. Always err on the side of caution in these things. Always err on the side of what's best for the patient. First, do no harm, right? Well, yeah, unless you're a fascist in America in 2025. And sadly for us, that is the entirety of the Republican Party, including that corrupt, illegitimate supermajority. But before we go on, it's crucial that we denounce the Trump regime's attacks on civil rights of all kinds, but specifically when it comes to the Trump regime's attacks on trans people. So please like and share this video. And if you believe in our mission, subscribe to our channel. We know that the court, as it's being run by the egregious John Roberts, will act in whatever way benefits Donald. So that means that Donald is going to have the right with impunity to attack trans kids across this country. Periodic reminder, and I wish I reminded you of this more. Trans people make up less than 1% of the United States population. The trans community is the most vulnerable community in this country because of Donald and his Republican thugs. So, if trans people altogether make up fewer than 1% of the population, how many trans people do you think there are who want to play in sports? Donald's agenda and looming Supreme Court decisions mean trouble for states that still support trans kids' rights. In fact, there's already a major clash between local laws and Donald's particular stance here. Bloomberg reports that the Trump regime has asserted that federal anti discrimination law bars transgender women and girls from female sports teams. That has sparked legal fights with states that allow students on teams that align with their gender identities. 27 states ban transgender girls from female sports. I will leave it to you to figure out which 27 states those are. States like California and Minnesota, however, say they are not required to comply with Donald's Title IX interpretation. States' rights, that thing that Republicans used to care about. But federal circuits are split on whether transgender based discrimination violates the law. And this is the point at which the Supreme Court is likely to render a decision. Billions of federal education dollars are at stake in these standoffs as legal battles over transgender rights unfold across the country. The Williams Institute, a UCLA law research center, estimates there are roughly 300,000 transgender youths across the country, and about 122,000 of those are estimated to participate in high school sports. There goes my point about the vanishing small number of children who want to play sports in their gender. In a lawsuit against California, the DOJ say the state's policy undermines the very purpose of Title IX to provide equal access to educational benefits, including interscholastic athletics. That is so Orwellian, I don't even know how else to put it. In 2025, California was allocated roughly $44 billion for its K through 12 schools. The DOJ claims that states are required to follow federal law, and if they don't, funding would be revoked. This does not just hurt trans children. It hurts all children. But let's start again with the obscenity of the entire weight of the federal government being brought down on the heads of a handful of children who just want to play sports in school. We are not talking about Olympic level athletes. We are not talking about professional athletes or even college athletes. We are talking about children. Obviously, the people most hurt by this are those trans children. How, you might ask, does it hurt all of our kids? Well, how comfortable would you feel as a child of any kind being able to be different in any way from other children? This drives home the point that conformity is required in order for you to be considered an actual human being. How else does it hurt all of our children? Well, we're raising them to be bigoted, provincial assholes. That's how. We are stripping out the best things of being human. We are making empathy more difficult and bigotry the preferred default. Yeah, so that hurts all children, and ultimately it is going to hurt all of us. The Trump regime is also working its discriminatory restrictions into its rules for federal workers. Earlier this fall, Human Rights Watch reported that the Trump regime is preparing to strip gender affirming care from the federal employees' health benefits program starting next year in 2026. This would affect more than 8 million federal employees, retirees, and family members who depend on the FEHB for health care. Under the new policy, services like hormone therapy and gender affirming surgeries would no longer be covered. Civil rights groups, including Lambda Legal and Human Rights Watch, have condemned the decision as discriminatory and unlawful, which it is. But this step is part of a broader Trump regime campaign against transgender rights. This has included attempts to ban youth access to gender affirming care, labeling it quote unquote child abuse. And they've also subpoenaed hospitals that provide these services. once again putting doctors in the crosshairs and making it more and more difficult for them to fulfill their oath to help people. We need to keep this in the context of a targeted attack on the most vulnerable among us that puts their lives in danger, not just their health care, to be sure that is the case, but their lives. Because, and this is something that Donald and his fascist Republicans are so expert at, making people seem less than so that it is easier to deny them their humanity. And therefore, it is easier to harm them with impunity. Please take a second and like and share this video. Be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please follow us and give the show a 5-star rating because it really does help other people find our content. Thanks.